So now that the car is gutted and all the crap from the previous owner is taken out, it's time to see if this car is even worth it.
All right, let me know where I gotta go. To the right a little bit. Ah! 1 second. Okay,
oh
now,
my God,
dude, you actually did really good. So we're, oh, you're on the pole now. You're in. All right. Oh no. There you go. All right, let me leave it. So you actually, it lifted you up high enough to where you ended up under the bumper.
So we're headed to SGK Performance right now, up in Sonoma, California. It's about an 8-hour drive, and we're gonna start tearing apart this car to really see everything that's wrong with it.
I mentioned to you guys that Faruk was going to be the one basically kind of like helping through the project. Well, obviously they're doing the bulk of the work here, and we're documenting everything. But I'm really excited. We got the car here. Like we did end up messing up the bumper a little bit on the way, just because the trailer, the car is actually lowered quite a bit, and not really lowered in a good way. Like it's the wheel fitment's weird, and you're just I mentioned that before. But anyway, like when we were pulling out the car off the trailer, it's like, boom, scrap. Ryan's like, hey, the bumper's coming off. I'm like, I guess we're just. Today, the plan is really a vehicle inspection. So we're here for the whole week. We're here for 5 days. I'm really curious to see where we are on the 5th day that we're here, like what's going on with the car, what things were installed, what things weren't, what do we have to push off, what things came up. It's gonna be a wild ride. What's the first thing you're doing today?
Well, we're going to pull it in. I'm going to get it up on the rack. We'll do a visual look over of the car. Make sure we find what the clunk is in the suspension, why the steering is so funky. Try to get a visual of everything that's possibly wrong with the car. And then we're going to pull all the spark plugs, do a compression test, leak down, make sure the motor is actually in good health before we even start tearing down. There's no reason to fix something if it's already broken, even if it is a pessimist point of view. Yeah, initial intake of the car, I mean, obviously it's beat up, scratched a little bit here and there. Thankfully the interior is already torn down, so that's something I don't have to worry about. As far as the overall condition of the car, yeah, I think it's something good to start with.
First things I noticed when I test drove it was, I mean, the seat wasn't bolted in properly, right? Which makes it really hard to feel kind of what's going on with the car. But then, and the power steering wasn't functioning properly. The power steering not functioning properly actually showed me how loose the front end was. Because when you have no assist, you really have a visceral feel of what's going on. And you could tell that all the front end arms were just walking around, So as I would turn slightly and get on throttle and get off throttle, you could feel the back end of the car kind of wavering. And it just indicative of things not being tight back there. So whether it was loose bolts or worn out suspension.
What are you checking with that right now?
They call them the lollipop bushings, basically, back here. It's your caster. It's actually already starting to break out on the rubber. I'm sure we're going to replace it with all this work, but.
Really today is like, compression test, see what we're working with, see what things need to be ordered as far as like any BMW parts or just any stock parts that aren't there or missing, we need to order, and really just, figure out where the plan is with this car.
Well, we're gonna go through and do pretty much all the bushings. Definitely all the power steering hoses. I think we've got that coming. Guibo shot. Ready to fall apart. It's ready to fall apart.
Oh, wow. So there's a part called the Guibo on the car that is basically a rubber piece, and that's just cracked as hell. That thing needs to be replaced. Luckily, it's not an expensive part, but that's probably a big part why, too. During shifts, there was like a little clunk.
It looks like we've had a leak coming out here.
Yep.
That's where all the clean is. So it looks like we'll have to do the output shaft seal on the transmission. Also looks like the selector shaft seal is going too, because it's all the way up here on your selector rod. It's all wet. Tranny mounts are starting to crack. Sway bar links. Let's see about these. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's how bad the bushing is. You want to go to the other side of the bushing? There.
Oh, man.
So yeah, that one's definitely shot. Yeah, this one too. Just go right in and push it all the way over to the other side.
So it's basically brand new, right?
I know we've got new arms coming, or we have the new arms there. There's a clunk in the rear. You can see the crack in the rubber. Guibo.
The three things that we do to a car when it comes in, just to make sure that the health is good, is we do a compression, a leak down, and we do an oil sample test. So we send out the oil to Blackstone, and we make sure that there's no bearing material or any kind of excessive wear that shows up in that test.
Okay. Start pulling the spark plugs out. Leak down compression.
So right now, say you go through the compression test and it doesn't go good. What are some cases that happen with the compression test that or what would it show on that?
Basically, it'll tell you how well the motor is compressing the air. A motor is just an air pump to begin with. Fuel just helps. You can find if you've got bad rings, bad valves.
And are you looking for like specific numbers? Like
Generally, yeah. I mean, it's a somewhat cold motor. This one I would expect to see, 175, 190, hopefully. We still have George's M3 E36. This was his compression numbers here, 190, 190, 180, all within. And then these are leak down numbers. Boy, that does look like crap.
Oh my God.
A compression test, basically you pull all the spark plugs, and what it does is it verifies how much air you're actually pumping in the motor itself. So you basically just run a hose in, you have a gauge on it, and you crank it enough times where it sucks air in, compresses, holds it, and you want to make sure that you've got a good compression number on there. It basically tells you the health of the motor.
I'm doing the hard job. I sit in a chair and I turn on the engine, crank it. Excited, a little bit nervous, and I'm just like, I don't know, I'm anxious.
Gonna boost the compression
Was that the one that you pulled out that had the most too?
Yeah, it was number 3 right in the middle. Yeah, that was the first one I pulled out. I was like, oh, this is, yeah. So there we go. At least
Cool.
we know we've got a good compression on the motor.
It's a good sign. So the first thing we did was some initial tests. Pretty much everything went good. The compression test, pretty much similar except for one cylinder still had oil in it. So basically that one was at 225 instead of 190 like the rest of them were around 200. The leak down test showed that I think it was cylinder 4 had a 40% leak. So obviously at that point you're only using 60% of that cylinder, so you can have misfires and different stuff. So we're hoping as things go on, everything goes good. But we just got to keep going.
Then eventually Josh is going to make it in, and we're going to probably start tearing out the suspension.
It's going to support pretty much where the motor mounts are, and hold the front of the engine. So I'm going to leave the transmission mount in place, and that'll hold the back portion of the car.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Sweet.
and that should hold the front.
So right now, underneath the car, literally like everything is coming off.
We're gonna be taking off this hanger cross member that's getting out of the way. Then we drop in the driveline out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
This right here, yeah.
yeah, your flex joint Guibo it's pretty worn out.
Everything from, we took the exhaust off to the axles, the control arms, the diffs off, brakes, rotors, obviously, you know, everything's just off the car right now. Today is just kind of like tearing everything apart, initial tests, and just really getting ready. I mean, you can hear in the background right now, it's just moving. So, talk to me about what's happening right now, or what happened.
What happened is we dropped out the whole subframe assembly like you see it, instead of taking it out piece by piece.
And a lot of it's getting taken apart to be cleaned. Well, then after that, we're gonna go ahead and basically reinforce the subframe. So we have these little reinforcement pieces that are gonna be welded in. All right, so what do we got going on?
So what we got going on here is I was trying to turn this guy here so I can get to the caliper bolts, and we figured out why this suspension seems so weird, like it had a little extra play. That's because you're gonna have to come in here and get that shot, but you're completely separated.
It wasn't even, are you oh.
Yeah, so this rubber completely separated
Dude.
from here. And yeah, so that was one big bump away from doing this.
The ones on this right now are K-Sport.
K-Sport,
Yep.
Unfortunately.
K-Sport coilovers.
I was actually considering running K-Sports.
Did that change your mind or what?
Well, I mean, these are old, and the
Yeah.
old K-Sports were not
Dude.
so great.
For like,
Yeah,
in all
this is
honesty,
K-Sport.
these could be, you know, who knows how old these could be.
So the front right shock came apart in two pieces. So as we jacked up the car, the front coilover just essentially disintegrated.
This is supposed to rotate. One of these pieces is supposed to rotate because you don't have an upper control arm.
Yeah.
So this is the upper control arm, and as it turns, this area right here is supposed to rotate. But what I'm guessing is this froze up, and what it was started doing is turning inside the bushing and eventually just ripped the bushing away.
We got some lightly used coilovers for sale. Brand new, like new condition, only used once. So far, honestly, everything that we've done has kind of been expected. So there really hasn't been anything crazy that's come up that's like, you know, oh, well, I guess we got to scrap the project or anything like that. So for a $5,000 car, it's really just like the wear and tear of everything that gets old. There's no power steering.
Okay, that's because your reservoir is empty. That's why I got this thing out here to drain it. When we went and opened up a reservoir for the power steering, there literally no fluid came out of the power steering reservoir. So that means it all leaked out. So the good news is it's not really shiny. Shiny means metal, and usually larger chunks than you want. So if it looks a little bit, but if you're seeing a glitter, like let's say a metallic paint job kind of deal, that's on the bad side. So I need to see if that's just casting flash or if those are chunks right there. That's just casting right there, so that's a good sign. And it's really not that bad. Here is the reason why we took this all apart. You have this single nut right here. And what happens is through clutch kicks and rev limiter and all that, you know, fun stuff, this nut because of this chain slack. You can see that chain slack there. It will whip and spin this the other way, and eventually this nut will back itself off and fall down into your oil pan. And at that point, it's not like this is splined or keyed or anything like that. It's a smooth piece. You don't have any more oil pressure. Your instant drop. And let's say you're in a corner banging rev limiter and this thing drops off. Well, you're probably going to smoke a bearing.
At this point, the car is getting ready to weld in the reinforcements, but we're nearing the end of the day. So wrapping up day one, we're making some pretty good time. Time to come back tomorrow and weld in the reinforcement plates. So far, I'm pretty stoked that this car was $1,500. Yes, it has a lot of problems and it's got a lot of things wrong, but it's a good car to be a drift car. It's a solid start and it's gonna be a lot of fun. Stay tuned for next week.